So my wife wants to say something as well.
Out of all the speakers that we've had here, these are my favorite.
So I have a set of speakers behind me. These are the Icon 12s from Norway. Audio sent these to me for review several weeks ago after sending me an email invite in a very unique way. I shared that video. They sent me a video in the sound demo I posted for these speakers the other day.
Steve, let me tell you, it wasn't Columbus who was first in America. It was us, the Norwegian Vikings. I will send you a pair for you to test, and then we speak.
It was very, very cool. But soon I had a phone call with Jonathan from Audio, and we decided to set up a review for the new Icon 12s. Now, these were just launched last month in February. I had them before that, but I needed some time to really listen to these, to live with them, and to get the full experience. I don't like getting speakers in and posting a review within a couple of days. I have to live with these things for a while because, as you know, when you get a set of new speakers, there's kind of a honeymoon phase, and that can last for a while. It can last for even a couple of months. But I've been listening to these guys with all kinds of music, with various amplifiers, solid state tube, Class A, Class AB, Class D. So today I want to share my experience with the Audio Icon 12s. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about dream systems and compromise before we get to the meat of the review. It's taken me 38 years to finally acquire my dream system. And I'm only talking about the electronics part of the system. It's way overkill for me. It's way overkill for my budget. I'm not a wealthy guy in any stretch of the imagination. But I'm getting older, and I figured I'm going to go for my dream if there's a way I can do it. And I did it, and it's the Nagra HD Pre, the HD DAC X, and the Classic Amp. Now, I'm not going to go into the sound of Nagra here, but I just want to state it's taken me 38 years to finally land here and have a set of electronics that I could die with. The only reason I would ever get rid of these is if I needed the money, and that happens with me from time to time. So while it's taken me 38 years to get a set of electronics that were a dream of mine for a long time, I haven't been that lucky in the speaker department. Now, with speakers, I've loved many speakers. I've raved about many speakers here on this channel. There were a couple speakers I said, oh, I want to keep these forever, right? But at the end of the day, number one, I'm a reviewer, and I get new stuff in here almost on a weekly basis now. And I get to hear some pretty cool stuff. And I also hear some stuff that's not that great, and I don't review it. But I get to hear some amazing things. And occasionally I'll hear something that comes in here that I like better than what I heard before. There's always something that's going to be better for you or me out there, right? That's how I look at it. But going back to speakers, there's always a compromise. I loved those Fleetwood DeVilles a couple of years ago. I love the top end, the spatial reproduction, the aliveness from that horn tweeter. The mid-range was beautiful, but after having them for a long term, the bass, the lower bass just wasn't there. I tried to implement subwoofers. It was fine, but some music, those subs would overblow the bass and it would mess with the purity of the speaker. I then had the Qualio IQ Ultras, which I said would give you an eargasm, and I still say they can give you an eargasm. Those things are so detailed up top and holographic. That was their specialty. They had great bass with that bass cabinet, but the open baffle top with the ribbon tweeter and that beautiful mid-range driver brought forth an alive sound that was uber detailed. And after a while, I wanted something a little more smoother and musical. But for fans of holographic imaging and detail coming out at you, those IQ Ultras were fantastic. I also loved the Closer Acoustics Augie and Bob setup, the 2 bass units and the Augie. Those are beautiful speakers, but being a reviewer, anytime I got something new in, I would have to disassemble the Bobs and the speakers and move them to another room. It became more of a chore, and I currently have the new Closer Acoustics Blocks system in that I'll be reviewing this month as well. Beautiful, beautiful system. These are all speakers that I loved and adored, and I still love and adore. They're beautiful, but I'm not the kind of guy who can just get new speakers in without selling the one I had before it, because again, it comes down to money. If I want to live with something new for a while, I have to unload what I had prior. I currently own and love the Pure Audio Project Duet 15s, right? What's the compromise in those? Well, they're open baffle. They have a unique sound, a beautiful sound. I love the vocals. They're a little three-dimensional, but they don't necessarily have the same sound in the bass department as a box speaker, right? And sometimes for some music, I miss that plumpness, but I love those Duet 15s. I threw away all the packaging. They're staying with me forever as far as I'm concerned, because for the price, which is more in my financial range, they're really, really great speakers. So when these were shipped to me, they were shipped out to me thanks to HiFi Loft. I'll throw them a shout out. They were the ones who arranged the shipment. They were shipped freight to me, so thank you to HiFi Loft for sending these out for review on behalf of OO Audio. Now, I thought they were going to be a little bit too large for the space, but once in, they blended really nicely, and once I started listening to them, I realized that that was not a concern at all. I have a 13 by 18 space here, and these fill this space just about perfectly, but more on that in a bit. These are 92 dB efficient and 8 ohm speakers. So you can run these and power these with almost any integrated amplifier or power amplifier. I ran them with my Nagra reference setup. I ran them with a little Winamp Pro. I ran them with a Black Ice Audio FX10H tube integrated that cost $800. And I also ran them with a Chord Ultima integrated that I had here for review at the time. Now the Icon 12s also have nice solid metal feet at the bottom. These are solid, and once they're set in place, they are not going to move because of that weight and because of these metal feet. So OO Audio thought of everything here in the design, all the way down to the feet. Now the rear of the speaker, you have your binding posts. These are high quality, they're made of metal, and everything looks nice in the back there. No complaints at all. So I believe, I could be wrong, but I think it was around 8 years ago that OO Audio released the Icon, right? And I guess it got critical acclaim, it got beautiful reviews, awesome reviews all over the place, and there were people who bought them that also raved about them. So fast forward to now 8 years later, OO Audio has released the Icon 12. They're now updated and upgraded. And they also released the Frig, which is their smaller speaker. And that speaker is getting raves from everyone who hears it as well. So it's interesting because I started listening to these. They were all set up in the room. They're set up around 7-8 feet apart. I sit 7.5 feet from them. They're towed in to where the tweeter would fire right behind my ears. And I found this positioning to be my preference in this room. That brought forth a beautiful sound, the sound that I crave. A little bit of warmth, but these are not really warm speakers, yet I wouldn't call them neutral. They're not bright in any way, but they're not warm in the way that some warm speakers add beef to the mid-range, right? To plump up that range in the 100 hertz bass range, the 90 hertz bass range. And some speakers do that to make the bass sound powerful, but that ends up coloring the voice a little bit and coloring the tweeter a little bit, the treble, I should say. And when you have a beefed up mid-range, yeah, it can make it sound powerful and rocking, but it can also mess with that clarity. Now, some speakers go the opposite, and they restrict the bass in the mids, and that causes more of a lean kind of sound in the mid-range, where you have the big lower bass, but you don't have any of that mid bass area coming through. Speakers like that don't sound very punchy. And I just reviewed a set, the Diptyque 115s. They have a leaner, more recessed mid-range, and so you don't have that punch. And so where do the Icon 12s fit in this area? They done a perfect job, and I don't like to use the word perfect, but for me, the mid-range of these is perfect. It took me back to the 90s and 2000s when I had Sonus Faber Guarneris, the original, right? That mid-range was so pure, natural, and beautiful. And with the Icon 12s, they're putting out a perfect blend of mid-bass, not too much, and top end. And that means that everything in that mid area is very natural, very flowy, right? These are majestic sounding speakers. And I wrote that in my notes before I saw that Audio described them as majestic. These are grand. They can go from a whisper to a roar. They are dynamic. They are powerful. But yet, if you're listening to gentle music, especially low volume, these are amazing at low volume. They can be as gentle as a dewdrop on a piece of grass on a spring morning. That's a chilly spring morning. Yet they can be as powerful and dynamic and hard-hitting as Thor's hammer, right? These are speakers that have a natural sound and a natural flow. The treble is airy. I was listening to some music with cymbals, and those cymbals came out almost a foot in front of the speaker in the air, and they sounded so real and so smooth and so present. These just have a sound that is complete from top to bottom. The bass here, you would think with that big 12-inch bass driver, they would be unruly in a room like this, but it's quite the opposite. The bass is tuneful, tight. You can hear everything in the bass guitar, you can hear every note clearly, right? But when the thunder strikes, when you hear something that is striking, I was listening to something, what was it the other day? Roger Waters, Comfortably Numb live, and it starts out with this thunderbolt, and it was startling, right? And the bass was like, oh, but it was never offensive in the room. So these have powerful deep bass. The mid bass is there, but it's not overly puffy, but yet it's not recessed. It's just about perfect. And this makes voices, whether you're listening to male or female voices, sound scary, spooky, real. And there's a holographic thing going on with the imaging. I'll talk about what each amp did with these speakers in a minute, but say, with example, my Nagra setup, the voices were so pure and they would come out a bit 3D into the room. I was listening to Billy Joel off his original early album, Cold Spring Harbor, right? I was streaming it from Tidal, I should say, through the Nagra streamer. And I played She's Got Away. And when his, the piano plays and the piano has weight and it sounds big and grand. And when his voice comes in, I never heard this song like this. His voice was so real and pure. And this is an old recording, and it was dead center in the middle coming out. And it's almost as if I could close my eyes and see him playing the piano in the room. The other sounds were kind of coming out all over. But I remember as I was sitting there listening, I had memories of the past when I would go see Billy Joel live. Those times I saw him live, it brought me back to those times. And when a speaker brings you back to old fond memories, they're doing something right. Now, I also listen to the old audiophile favorites, Diana Krall, Melody Gardot. I listen to some 50s music. And Diana Krall, Love Letters, off the Look of Love CD. But I was streaming, I should say again, streaming from Tidal. So present, so real. Her voice was so rich. And it goes back to the way that these icons are doing mid-bass. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, I wanted to challenge these speakers. There's an album I used to love as a teenager, and I had the vinyl. I used to love a lot of rock music in the 80s, and I bought an album called Tooth and Nail from the band Dokken back then. I had no idea what to expect. I just bought it blind at a record store. I'm like, this looks like a cool cover. And I used to love that album. But in my older years, as I started building these audio systems, that streaming that anyway, or even playing a CD, I used to have the CD, sounded always to me thin, a little exaggerated in the treble, a little jagged in the treble. There was not much punch in the mids. I tried listening to this on a bunch of speakers. It didn't sound good on any of them in the past. So I just said, well, I can't listen to this album anymore. So this is a challenging album. It's kind of a bad recording. And again, it's not the most refined sounding recording. So I queued it up on Tidal and I pressed play and listened to the whole album. And I was blown away because now I was hearing the mid bass punch. It had that weight. And while the treble was still a little ragged from the way it was recorded, it was the best I've ever heard this old crappy 80s recording sound. So these are not going to be speakers that bring the warts and all. I know some people praise that as a good thing when a speaker shows you the warts and all. I much prefer a speaker that's going to let me listen to any music I want, and it's going to sound beautiful and in some cases magical. And it sounded really, really good. I remember walking out into the kitchen and my wife was there. And even in the kitchen, which is around the corner in another room, I was hearing the bass and the fullness. And I said, holy cow, to my wife. Amazing what it was doing. So I came in another night and I was listening to some electronic music, carbon-based life forms. I know they have some big bass. And this sounded just boom, so 3D and expansive in this room, yet everything was sounding natural. Everything was sounding effortless, these are living things and they're just breathing out the music into the room. Every time I queued up a song with the Icon 12s and the Nagra setup, I was blown away. So I said, okay, maybe it's the Nagra stuff. This stuff is, Nagra is highly respected for a reason. It's crazy expensive, absurdly expensive. I agree, it's ridiculous, but I can't argue with the build quality, the design, or the sound, which is heavenly. So another thing I want to mention is the horn tweeter here. Now, Audio is calling this a quad vertex sound field horn. I don't know what any of that means, but I know it sounds very, very refined. There's none of that horn shout. There's zero horn shout. There's zero of that coloration we normally hear with some horn speakers. There's none of that hollowness. I also want to show you the ports. So over here, you'll see the ports. They're on the side of the speaker. You can face these in or out. If I take the other speaker and put it here, they would be facing out towards the wall. I tried it both ways. I preferred it slightly in this room with the ports facing in. And this is cool because that bass energy is not going out from the back, hitting the wall. It's not coming out from the front. It's coming out from the side. And you can see this angled cabinet and how they design this enclosure. It's really, really something special. Also, this is a 12-inch bass driver, and it produces bass not in a floppy, flabby way. It provides plenty of beef and low end in this room. It's amazing, but it's also clean, clear, tight. Overall, these are super refined sounding speakers. So I then switched to something a little more affordable. I put in the Chord Ultima integrated amp. And it was a little darker than the Nagra, a little more beefy, but yet it still sounded beautiful with the Icon 12s. Rock music was even more hard-hitting, more of that gut punch, but yet the treble was a little different than the Nagra. The Nagra was more crystalline and open. The Chord was a shade darker. I then put in the Black Ice FX10H tube integrated amp. This thing is like $800 and sounds beautiful with the human voice. So I put that in, and again, I was blown away. This is like not 10 watts, I think this amp is. I could be wrong if I'm going from memory. But it powered these without an issue, and it was sounding sweet, smooth as butter, not as refined as the Nagra. Nothing bested the Nagra performance, but you don't need to go to that extreme, right? Say you have a budget and you're like, oh, I have $25,000 and I want the best speakers I can get. A pair of speakers like this and a more affordable integrated amp can do the trick. So that FX10H was sounding really, really good. So then I'm like, okay, what if I put a Winamp Pro, that $380 all-in-one box with a streamer, DAC, and amp, 60 watts per channel. Fired that up, and I was missing some of the three-dimensional things going on. The sound stage shrunk a little bit, but lo and behold, everything sounded really musical and really good. And again, there was a little more beef going on, and the treble was a little more unrefined. But overall, it sounded fantastic. So Audio is correct when they say you can power these with just about any amp. Finally, I tried those Orchard Audio monoblocks I have in here for review. Now, these are $5,000 a pair. They're high power, up to 500 watts into 4 ohms. And they sounded fantastic. These sounded probably, it was my second favorite sound, but I was using the Nagra HD Pre with it. They sounded beautiful with Class D. So overall, these are a speaker that you can drive with any amp. And to me, that ranks them up higher on the scale just because of that. Because another thing I don't like with some speakers is you get them in and you have to find the perfect amplifier for them. These are easy to drive and they sound beautiful with any amp I powered them with. So overall, these are high-end speakers that are heirloom quality. These are speakers that can last anyone a lifetime. Heck, I would buy them if I didn't just blow all my money on the Nagra gear, and I still owe money on the preamp. So I can't buy anything for a long while. But man, I was telling my wife, I'm like, should I sell my DAC to buy the speakers? These are awesome. They're my dream speaker. They're the most perfect speaker I've ever found for my taste. So I say this is what perfection in a speaker looks like to me. The Audio Icon 12s, big majestic sound, beautiful build quality that will last a lifetime. The dynamic nature of these, the live feeling, listening to live recordings filled this space like I was at a concert. Feel about these speakers like I feel about the Nagra gear. I finally found my dream piece, my dream speaker that for me, finally have no compromise. So anyone out there with a budget of $20K for speakers and you're looking for speakers that will last you a long, long time, speakers that do everything so well, and I'm not hyping these. I'm not getting paid for this review. I'm speaking from the heart here. The Audio Icon 12 are the finest speakers I've ever heard in my life. I've heard about 250 sets of speakers over the last 38 years. And these are the best that I have heard for my tastes. So I want to applaud Audio for releasing the Icon 12s. And anyone out there who's curious about these, I believe they will be at Expona this year, and they should have these on display. Check out that show. You'll be able to hear these speakers. Also, I was just told from Jonathan at Audio, they just picked up a new distributor, or their distributor, which is Harmonia Distribution. So soon you will be able to see these at dealers where you can go. I think HiFi Loft has a pair already. So those of us in America, dealers will be starting to carry these. You can go audition them and see for yourself what I'm talking about. So I'm going to end this now because I could just keep blabbing and blabbing. I don't know if there's anything I missed. Everything about these is just beautiful, artistic, and I love what Audio is doing. Other than that, I love you all. I thank you all, and I will see you guys very, very soon in the next video. Have a good day.